Your cosplay is so cute, by the way.
Thank you so much. A little bit of a noob question, but how do I share my screen with making the slideshow full screen?
Oh, okay. So on the bottom of the toolbar, you'll see like the screen button that says share screen. You can click that. And then you have to click specifically the window with the PowerPoint because Zoom doesn't let you like switch.
Cool. Thanks so much. I've never done this before, so bear with me.
Okay. No worries.
All right. Is everyone seeing my screen?
I see your wallpaper.
Yes.
Oh, awesome.
All right, let me just move this little bubble out of the way and we can get started. So hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to my panel. I am Birdie, also known as CiaoBirdie Cosplay, and this panel is going to be all about intro into cosplay photo shoots. So a little bit about me. Hello, my name is Birdie. I'm a New England-based cosplayer and photographer. And so my goal for this panel is to give you tips and tricks from both sides of the aisle. So tips that can be used for cosplayers to planning their photo shoots, especially if you're new to it, and then photographers that are also new to it, or just anyone that wants to learn how the whole photo shoot shebang goes. So a little bit more background about me. I've been cosplaying for about 7 years. If Anime Boston had happened this year, that would have been my 7-year anniversary. And I've been photographing for 4 years. I mostly do cosplay photography, but every now and then I do like to take pictures of my friends' pets. So if you look at any of my social medias, you'll also see some cats and dogs as well. In terms of my own cosplay special skills, I'd say my main skill is sewing. I am predominantly a seamstress. I've done a little bit with foam work and stuff, but definitely my main strength is sewing. Finding lots of good fabric deals online, and then planning cosplays way too far out. That is totally unnecessary. Some of my favorite fandoms are Avatar: The Last Airbender, which if you were here when this slideshow started, you saw my background is from Avatar. Love Live, you can see, Star Wars, Steam-Powered Giraffe, and Miraculous Ladybug. And my absolute dream cosplay is Christine Daae's Star Princess gown from Phantom of the Opera, which I am hoping to accomplish next year. And so here's a little bit of what's on the agenda. This is mostly going to be a general, broad intro into cosplay photography. So I'm hoping to touch briefly on a few different topics rather than delving just right into one. So this is a great place if you want to get started as a cosplayer or as a photographer. So we'll chat a little bit about convention photography, which is obviously photo shoots that are done at the convention, on location photo shoots, which are done outside of the convention, posing and expressions, especially if you're a new cosplayer. This can be a little bit of a challenge, especially if you're like me, a little bit introverted. And then some personal favorite tips or stylistic things that I enjoy in my own photography. And then since the last time I did this panel about 2 years ago, I did update the whole thing. And one of the additional aspects that I put in was a bonus quarantined round, yay, which is at-home self-photo shoots. All right, so let's get started. And along the way, if anyone has any questions, feel free to type into the chat, or I will also have some time at the end for a little bit more detailed Q&A. So whatever works for you. So convention photography. This is obviously cosplay photography that is taken at the convention. So everyone's there for the con, everyone's already in cosplay, bringing out their best, and these are photo shoots that happen at the con. And these are usually in locations that are either in the con center or near the con center, such as local parks. If you do boudoir photography, this might be in a hotel room. And typically this is going to be limited basically to what I would say would be the half-mile radius around the con, depending on what public transit is and the preference of the photographer or model. If there's a place that you really want to get a shot at, that's a little bit further out from the con. But for the most part, I would say you're basically in your little half a mile radius. And so these are all examples of photos from past Anime Bostons, and these were all taken in the convention center. So if you're familiar with Anime Boston, these were all taken at the Heinz Convention Center, right in the convention center. And so you can see your backgrounds are going to kind of be kind of bland, which is not necessarily a bad thing. A blank wall is definitely a fantastic canvas for just about any cosplay. And then these are some photos that I took myself. So one of the things I forgot to mention in the beginning is throughout this presentation, I'm going to be including photos that other photographers took of me while in cosplay, as well as interspersing them with photos that I took of others in cosplay. So these are all again from, the first two are from Anime Boston, and then the third one is from KatsuCon. And so these are all going to be in the convention center. So like I said, you might have a little bit of a limit in terms of what your locations are, your backgrounds in the con center. And it's also good to check out what the convention or the convention center's rules are with photography. I know some of them don't like photographers to come into the con and do paid photo shoots, or don't like you to take photos in certain areas, such as stairs or anywhere that's going to cause any obstruction to traffic or anything like that. So it's good to keep that in mind. So the other locations that you're going to see when you're at a convention are going to be the con hotel or the building. So often conventions are held in convention centers that are either in a hotel or have some hotels either attached to them or in the surrounding area. And these can prove to be really cool locations, and some very different locations that you might not be able to get normally. And one of the big examples that I would give of that is KatsuCon. If you've been to KatsuCon, the Gaylord Hotel in Maryland is an absolutely gorgeous location, both inside and outside. And it makes it a really prime location for photo shoots that are both in the con, but also give you some really beautiful backgrounds. So the first photo of me as Muffy was taken at KatsuCon this year, and this was actually directly outside of the convention center. They have some really beautiful gardens, and KatsuCon, I will continually rave about KatsuCon and their beautiful locations. The second Rocky photo was taken in the arcade at the Kalahari in Colossal Con East, which is in Pennsylvania. And then the third photo was also taken at KatsuCon inside the lobby of the Gaylord Hotel. And then we have around the con photography. And this is, like I mentioned, anything that is going to be in that little half a mile to a mile radius around the con. And this can vary greatly depending on the location of the convention. Usually they're in cities, not always. So depending on where you are, you'll get different shots, which might be suitable for different types of cosplays or different types of characters that you're really going for. So the first one was a shot that I took at Massive Comic-Con in 2017, and that is a convention that is held in downtown Worcester, Massachusetts. So we walked maybe about a quarter mile away from the convention center and got some really cool urban photos, which really suited her character of Riri Williams from Marvel Comics. The second photo is of me at Anime Boston, and if you're familiar with Anime Boston, there is a really beautiful church courtyard area across from the con, and that was taken there. And then the third photo was taken at the hotel that is attached to Rhode Island Comic Con. So a little bit of pros and cons to convention photography. Some pros is that you're already in cosplay. You already have a reason to be in cosplay. You're already there. So you don't need to travel far just for a photo shoot, if that's not something that you typically like to do. Depending on your photographer, rates can sometimes be cheaper. Some photographers charge a little bit less because they're already going to the convention for a reason. They're booking multiple clients, so they might not be relying on a large chunk of income coming from one specific job. And generally, you often have a larger choice of photographers. If you go on any of the convention Facebook groups, like Anime Boston Social, KatsuCon Social, you can see photographers posting, looking for clients, clients looking for photographers, anything like that. And because they're large events, they're going to draw a large amount of photographers. So you have a bigger choice than you would normally. And because of that, you often get to work with photographers you may not always be able to, such as for distance reasons or whatever that may be. Especially if it is a larger con and it is drawing photographers and cosplayers from all over parts of the country, sometimes different parts of the world. You get a chance to work with people that maybe you've seen their work online and you've loved it, but you've never had a chance because you don't live near them. This might be your chance. And for our cons, no pun intended, for locations, you are pretty much limited to working with what you have. Depending on the convention, this might be a really great location, like KatsuCon or Colossal Con East, which is in a water park. So it really depends. You can really strike lucky depending on where you go. And I know some cosplayers like to plan their cosplays around the location that they're working with so they can get the photos that they really want. Some photographers only offer smaller shoots or shorter shoots. I've seen photographers typically offer between anywhere between 15-minute to an hour shoots. It really kind of depends. For the most part, I would say typically offer are half an hour shoots because they're booking oftentimes multiple clients back to back throughout the day. And so they're not going to be able to devote a whole 2 hours typically. And that's also something that I do myself when I book at cons. I typically offer between 15 minutes and 30 minutes. And sometimes it can be hectic trying to fit everything in and coordinating with photographers and coordinating with your own schedule. I am guilty oftentimes of stuffing my schedule with costume changes and fitting in clients and all stuff like that. So while it is important to serve your clients best or work with your photographers the best, you also want to take that into account so that you're not overloading yourself and you end up miserable or you miss appointments and things like that. And popular locations can often get super crowded easily. If there is a prime location that you really want to shoot at, there's a 99% chance that 20 or 30 other people want to shoot there as well, depending on the size of the convention. So that can make it a little bit difficult sometimes, trying to fight other photographers. So next up is our out of con or on location shoots. And these are photo shoots that are done outside of the convention center or the convention setting on your own time and in a location that you and your photographers have handpicked. And this is a really great option if there's a location that you know that would really beautifully suit what you're doing or the outfit that you're doing. This gives you a chance to get those really great photos that may have a more interesting or suitable background than just, say, the wall of a convention center or the outside area of a hotel. So these are all examples of photos that were taken on location shoots. I've actually not done too many of them myself, but I'm hoping to get into that more in the future since they are really, really fun. So the first two photos were both taken in Rhode Island. The first Winter Soldier photo was taken in downtown Providence, outside an abandoned building. So we got a really cool vibe that we were going for Bucky. The second photo was taken at a local park in Providence, which has a really beautiful marble structure that if you're anywhere in the New England area, a lot of cosplayers and cosplay meetups happen there sometime. And then the third photo was taken in the Seaport area in downtown Boston, which was a really cool location for sort of a 1950s vibe that we were going for with my Marinette cosplay. So an important note, or a few important notes about on-location shoots, that it's always very important to check with the location or the people that are in charge of the location that are okay with you shooting. A few slides ago, I mentioned the church courtyard area across from Anime Boston. In past years, that had been a location that was often used to hold large group photo shoots, but in the past couple of years that I've been there, they really don't like people doing photography and they will chase you out of there. And that's kind of what they spend their whole weekend doing during AV. So it's very important to make sure that the area that you're shooting in is not restricted or has any type of restrictions or anything like that beforehand, both as a courtesy towards the location and the people that may be running it, and so that you don't run into trouble when you get there in person and then are stuck. Some locations, kind of going off of the first one, some locations don't want large groups. They might not want certain props, especially prop weapons. And if you are using a prop weapon for a photo shoot, make sure that it has the proper identification, that it is a fake weapon, such as if you have a fake gun, that it has the orange tip on it, and do not show it in public, like in the city or anything. And actually some cities have laws against that, so please keep that in mind. Some places may even want a permit for photos. Again, it really kind of depends as you go. And then going off of all of this, always contact the appropriate people to make sure you are abiding by laws and also so that you're not finding yourself in an awkward or stuck situation. So for our out of con photography, I think that they kind of sometimes have more pros than convention photography, just in terms of the type of photos you get, that you have that opportunity to really handpick the type of photos that you're getting. And so you're able to pick an area that will work really well with your costume. I know some people that have specifically made or bought costumes because they know that there's a location that would be really great and will get them some great photos. And that was their big motivation in getting that costume. Oftentimes you don't need to worry about areas crowded with other photographers or cosplayers or people in general. Obviously that depends on the location, if there's any other events going on or anything like that. You are able to schedule it on your own time, and as a result, you may get a longer shoot time. Many photographers who offer out-of-convention shoots usually offer longer amounts of time because this is might be the only job that they're doing that day or that they're relying on for that weekend. Take a quick water break. And then our cons. Some photographers, and I would argue and say most photographers, will charge more because you may be getting a longer amount of time for your shoot, and it also requires them to go out of their way, rather than if at a convention everyone's there for the same reason. You may be limited with the the specific photographers that you can work with. For example, this is often due just to location. Say if you're in the New England area, you might be hard pressed to try and get a photographer from Florida to come up and work with you. So you pretty much are kind of dipping into whatever your little local pool of photographers is. You may have to travel farther to get to that perfect location, and this is entirely up to you. I know some people that have driven 4 or 5 hours to get to a location that was really important to them to get some great photos. I know some people that prefer to not do that, so this is entirely a matter of personal preference. Some people are uncomfortable being in cosplay in public, and I will admit that I am one of those people. I do not like to be out in cosplay if I'm the only one out in cosplay. So when I have done location shoots, it's usually with other people in cosplay or with a larger group of people. Just a personal preference, I always feel weird about it. And oftentimes you can expect onlookers and people that will ask what you're doing. And, for the most part, this is just honest curiosity and there's no harm done. Just like at a con, you can occasionally get some rude people or people that might not be super appreciative or nice about what you're doing, but for the most part, it's just like anything that can happen just in your day-to-day life. So don't let that deter you, but it is something to keep in mind. All right, so moving on to the next phase of our photo shoot panel is how to pose for cosplay photography. And this, again, we'll talk about this kind of from the cosplayer point of view as well as from the photographer point of view. And pretty much all of the tips that I'm discussing can be used for both cosplayers and photographers. They can help cosplayers bring up their skills as they're posing, and also to allow photographers to help their cosplayers or their models if they're having a little trouble kind of figuring out how they want to pose or what kind of shot they want to get. So obviously one of the number one things is angles, and it's great to have an understanding of angles even if you are not behind the camera, and this can help you get the shots that you want even if you're in front of the camera. And so different types of angles will get you different types of shots, and depending on the type of vibe that you want to give off, either from the ambiance of the shot as a whole or from your character, your angles might vary drastically. So it's important to keep these in mind when you're posing or anything like that, to help bring your character to life on the screen or on paper that you really want. And so one of the first examples that I'm going to give is high angles. And high angles are photos that are shot where you might be above the cosplayer, or you're above them looking down. And these typically make the subject look small or non-threatening. And these are great for characters that you want to portray as sweet, innocent, gentle, unassuming, that type of thing. So for an example, we have our adorable Flaffy cosplayer here that I took this photo at the Anime Boston 2019. She really wanted to go for a little Lolita, soft, sweet vibe for her character. So we had her sit on the ground and I shot the photo from above. And this is another example of me at KatsuCon. This is me as Ball Gown Ellie from Love Live, and I think these type of angles work really well for if you have really large dresses like ball gowns like that. can really show off your costume as well. If you have long flowy robes or dresses or anything like that, it can give you a really elegant and beautiful, beautiful shot. And everyone in my group for this photo, for this costume set, got photos like this on the ground. And then conversely, we have our low angles and photos that are shot from a lower angle where the cosplayer model is up high and the photographer is shooting from down low, typically make the subject look taller or more dominating. And so this is great for characters that you want to portray as strong or threatening or badass, or not even necessarily a villain, just confident. And so here's an example of a Yoshiko cosplayer. She was cosplaying as punk rock Yoshiko from Love Live at Anime NYC last year. And so we wanted to go for a kind of badass, I think I'm awesome vibe. And so she was standing on like a concrete barrier outside of the Javits Center in New York City. And we shot the photo from me kind of crouching on the ground. And then similarly to how I said about even if you're not going for like a threatening or badass view, just a confident vibe from your character, we have this Captain America cosplayer. And so we shot not as dramatic a low angle as the previous photo, but I did crouch down a little bit to take this photo, and you can tell that it really gives her an air of confidence, and she's the star-spangled girl with a plan. And it also shows off her dress really well. And so a lot of things you want to take in mind when doing photos from different angles as well is not only how the character is portrayed, but to show off the costume. And this is entirely a preference of both the cosplayer and the photographer. Are they looking for more emotion or focusing more on the character as a person, or would they like to show off their costume more? And this is entirely a personal preference, depending on what they're going for. So you can have a chat about that with your photographer, and they can help you find the best angles for you. And so always look at the camera sometimes. And so obviously when someone is standing in front of you with the camera, the natural thing is to want to look directly at the camera. And that's great if that's the type of shot you want, but it is not the only place that you can look to give a really great shot. So looking at the camera gives one type of feel, which is often focusing on what's in front of them, on the viewer, a sense of intensity or moving forward, while looking off the camera, depending on the character's expression, can give a totally different feel of like daydreaming, they're lost in thought, they're focusing on something off frame. And so for an example, we have our Bakugo cosplayer here, and they were going for a really intense, because they're doing like a villain AU, a really intense, strong, threatening vibe. So not only are they staring me down in the camera, they are also slightly leaning their body forward. So that gives a sense of a forward-moving motion as if they're getting ready to attack the viewer. And that was something that we really wanted for this shot. And then conversely, there's another photo of me at Fan Expo Boston in 2017. Not as much as the same forward motion, but I am staring down the camera, which is the vibe that I really wanted to give of like intensity for my Mad Max cosplay. And then on the flip side, we have looking off of the camera, and then we have May from Overwatch. And she's clearly not looking at us at all, focusing on something off screen. And it gives a really cool vibe of she's sort of in a daydream state, especially you can tell by her sort of light body posing. She has the gun, but she's not preparing to attack anyone. She's not, in a pose like that or anything. And then another sort of daydreamy photo of me as Akito from Fruits Basket, gazing slightly off the camera, and then also with similar type of body language, light, relaxed body language, gives a sense of sort of mind is drifting elsewhere, that sort of thing. And moving forward with poses, one of the things that I think is very helpful and something that I used to do quite frequently when I was a beginner cosplayer was static poses, which is where you're basically just standing there stiff, not doing anything. And even when you're just standing there, it's important to note the placement of your arms, your legs, your hips, anything like that. And that can make the shot more interesting. So a static pose doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you can't take photos where you're just standing there doing nothing, but it's important to note like how your shoulders are sitting, how your hips are moving. So a drastic example of a dynamic pose would be this cosplay from Twin Star Exorcist, where he is smashing the wall and acting very aggressive. There's a lot of motion going on, and obviously that is definitely a dynamic pose. And if you have a character that would do a sort of attack or action pose, this is obviously a great example of that. And so you're definitely not going to have any static poses with a character that is like that. And then a little bit of a less violent example of that is me as Sailor Mercury. So this is kind of the example of where I am technically just standing there doing nothing, but the way that I've twisted my body looking towards the camera versus just standing there and holding my arms like straight. I'm putting my arms a little bit more, twisting the hips toward the camera gives a sense of motion. So even though I'm just technically standing there, it is a more interesting shot. And bonus points if you, like me, had the 1 in a million chance where the wind blows your skirt exactly the way you want it to. So shout out to Mother Nature for this shot. And here's another example of our Ladybug cosplayer who is, again, technically just standing there, but the way she has her hips cocked, the way she's holding her hands, makes for a more interesting and dynamic pose than if she were just, you know, standing straight up, leaning against the fence. And it's also very helpful if you have a cosplay or a character that has a signature pose, like we have Daya's Boo Boo. If you are a Nico cosplayer or a Junko cosplayer, you know what I'm talking about. So that's also great if you have a character that does that type of thing. So that's, you know, one trick that you already have in your arsenal. And if you're looking to delve more into the posing aspect of cosplay, I definitely recommend, I hadn't updated her name since I last did this, but I believe she goes by Fawnina now. At the time I made this, she was going by Mango Cyrene, but she's a really fantastic cosplayer who does a lot of Cosplay 101 videos that cover all different aspects of getting into cosplay. And I definitely recommend her posing for cosplay video, which you can find on her channel in YouTube. So the next part that we're going to touch on is expressions. And the goal of your expression for your cosplay is to basically have the person viewing your photo be able to tell what you're thinking or feeling through your face alone. And this is often used in conjunction with whatever pose that you're doing. But I decided to give this a separate section because, as I'll mention in a couple slides, it's not always as easy as it looks. And so sometimes you need to over-exaggerate what your expression is in order to make sure that it gets across. And so this might feel a little obvious or weird to you, or like you're definitely going over the top. And I'll show you an example in a couple slides. But almost 99% of the time, I promise you, you're not. So basically, you want to have your viewer get a glimpse of what's going on inside your mind, or how you're feeling, or how your character is feeling just from looking at your face. And something that I was very guilty of when I was first starting off cosplay was what I have coined as same face syndrome, which is where you have multiple photos and multiple poses and you have the same face. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a blank face, but it's the same face. And if that is what your cosplay is, that's what your character does, then that's fantastic. But I personally like to vary it up a little bit depending on the character. And again, all of this is a matter of personal preference. There is not necessarily one right way or one wrong way to do something. So if you feel your character or the person that you are doing photos for will go for something a little different, that is 100,000% okay. And another posing for cosplay video that I recommend that focuses especially on expressions is Indra Rojas, their YouTube video, which is very, very helpful, that I watched when I was first starting out. And so to kind of give an example, I use this photo of me again as the Winter Soldier because I have almost all of my face obscured. And one of the things I tried to convey through this photo was you know, maybe it's like Bucky looking down the trigger and he's having some flashbacks of Cap from the 1940s. And so I really tried to be able to convey that sort of like sad remembering, kind of fuzzy memory type of thing, just through my eyes. And I think I did an okay job. These photos were from a few years ago. And this is an example of when you might be doing an expression that might feel like it's a little over the top to you, or like, you know, you feel like your face is in some crazy expression. And this was one of them where I felt like I was going to end up looking absolutely ridiculous when I saw these photos after, like I was doing some like puppy dog eyes or something that was definitely far from what I wanted, but actually it ended up okay. And this is another big example of when I felt like I was over exaggerating a pose or expressions, and I 100% wasn't. Especially when I cosplay a lot of idol characters, and if you are familiar with Nico from Love Live, she has a very big and a very loud personality. And when I was having this photo taken, I remember thinking that my face was like going to look absolutely insane. I was opening my eyes too wide, I was smiling too much, it was going to look absolutely, absolutely ridiculous. And it 100% did not. So, you know, what you may be feeling that you are doing, like too much or over the top, is not what your viewer will see in the photograph afterwards. So if you feel like you're going way too over the top, I almost 100% can tell you you are not. It may feel weird. My face felt like it was stuck in this like Barbie doll smile, but it ended up okay. And so moving on to some of my personal favorites, and these are types of tips or stylistic things that I personally enjoy as both a photographer and a cosplayer, and these are the types of shots that I like to get of my cosplays if they are applicable for the character, and the type of shots that I like to do for others, you know, of course, if that is something that they are going for, but these are, again, not the only right way. These are, again, up to a total matter of personal preference. And so one of the shots that I really enjoy are shots that have clear focal point with soft background. So like in this Umi photo, the focus point of the camera is on her finger, and then everything else becomes a soft blur behind it. And I think this is really great for photos that you want to give a type of like in your face type of feel. It's really great if you have like Umi here, a pose where they're pointing or something is being shown to the viewer. It's also really great if they have a weapon or a prop that you really want to focus on. And I also really like it because it gives a depth to the photo. You can tell from the focal point of her hand that, you know, that is clearly close to the camera, but the rest is blurry, so it's more farther away. And I really like the depth that those types of shots give. Another type of photo that I really like are photos that focus either focus on the eyes, or the eyes are the only thing in view, depending on the character. And this is one of my favorite photos of my friend as Mystique from Marvel Comics, and she's obscuring 60–70% of her face, and she's really showing the expressions entirely through her eyes, and I think it gives a really, really dramatic view and a dramatic feel to the photo. And kind of going back off of what we chatted about on expressions, if you focus solely on the eyes, you can get all types of different emotions that will convey really strong. You can be happy, sad, emotional, intense, anything like that, depending on your character. And if you get shots that are focusing on the eyes, I think those can be really, really beautiful shots. Another one is what I coined as thinking beyond the center. And what I mean by that is a lot of times when you take photos, you might think, okay, I have to focus on my model is going to be right, and we're going to shoot it from a vertical view, or we're going to shoot it from a horizontal view, and our character is going to be exactly right in the middle. And that is something that I, for the most part, did when I first started doing photography, and then as the years went by and I started doing it more, kind of developing my own personal style, I started tilting my camera a little bit, depending on the character again, and the angles that they were going for. And it gives a really interesting view of the character. And even though it's, you know, you're seeing everything for the most part that you would see if you're shooting from a vertical or a horizontal point of view, but it does make the photo a little bit more eye-catching, just a little bit more interesting and not quite as bland as going straight up or straight to the side. And that's what we did for this Adventure Zone character. I'm not gonna say her name because I actually don't know how to say her name, so I'm not gonna say it. So not too dramatic in this shot, but I do like the way that it frames both her and her weapon. And so some points to remember at your photo shoot. It's always important, and this should be a rule in life in general. Be kind and courteous to the environment and those around you. For example, if you are going to a location shoot, say like a public garden or a beach or anything like that, make sure you don't leave anything around, any props around. A lot of photographers use things like smoke bombs and stuff like that. Don't leave any of your trash around. And be courteous to those around you. That includes if you're at a convention, other cosplayers, other photographers. Sometimes it can get really cramped, and other people might be getting into your shot, or you might accidentally be getting into other people's shots. It's important to just not be upset at them. It happens, so be kind and courteous. Especially if you're shooting with someone that you've not worked with before, it's important to bring a friend with you to help you feel comfortable. And I know sometimes in the cosplay community in particular, we have had issues where photographers may have been taking advantage of their models or engaging in some shady behavior. So if you have a photographer that tells you that you can't bring a friend or another person with you to your photo shoot, absolutely do not work with them. So we got to keep our community safe and make sure everyone has a safe and good time. So always bring a friend to your shoot if it's someone that you're not working with. You're working with someone that you've never met before, or you're not familiar with, or you're doing a boudoir shoot in particular. So always safety first. Respect the limits of both your photographer and your model. And this goes both ways. If you are a photographer and you're shooting your model and you want them to do a certain type of pose or get a certain type of photo in a certain place that they're not comfortable with, it's important to respect those boundaries. And likewise, if you are a model or cosplayer that wants to get a certain type of shoot that for whatever reason your photographer isn't comfortable with, it's important to respect those boundaries, whatever they may be. And this is something that comes up periodically in the cosplay community, and that is, unless it's otherwise stated, you don't own the photos that are taken of you. Your photographer owns the copyright to those images unless they have stated otherwise, like in a contract. And this isn't a matter of, like a personal thing or anything. This is a matter of copyright law. And so you do need to get permission before using photos for things like prints, magazine submissions, any advertising or promotional material, and even just where you can share them and how you can share them. And this goes for if many photographers watermark their photos. I am one of them. And this is part of the copyright that we're trying to protect so that other people don't steal the photos, claim it's theirs, make money off things that we've not consented to. So always make sure that when you're sharing your photos, you are doing them in a way that is okay with your photographer and that you've talked about, and that if there is a watermark, do not crop that out. And then always credit your photographers and your models in your photos that you are posting on social media or sharing anywhere like that. It's always important to give credit where credit is due. And so we're on to our bonus quarantine round, and this is at-home self-photo shoots. This is something that I started getting into a little bit last year because I really like kind of the challenge of it and being able to take photos in what's kind of an irrelevant or boring or bland location and being able to turn them into something really cool. But obviously, as circumstances have caused conventions and photo shoots and things like that to be canceled, I know a lot of people have kind of gotten into this, and it's a way to not let those cosplays go to waste. So I'm just going to give a few little tips and tricks about this, and it is easier and cheaper than you think. So I've assembled a kind of must-have list for this, and I want to start off saying that you don't have to have a fancy DSLR camera to do really cool photos from home. A smartphone works just as well. Whatever you have, you can get really great photos. I definitely recommend a tripod. It's been immensely helpful to me. Before I had a tripod, I would kind of tape my phone onto this like lamp I had that has like different bulbs coming out of it. So I would like carefully balance it and tape it to an angle that I wanted. But the tripod has made my life significantly easier. A ring light, photo lights, or any non-overexposing light source. So this can just be your kitchen light if that works great. Basically, you don't want anything that is going to be so bright, it's going to totally wash you out and blow you out. Photo backdrop or sheets if you have them, or just a plain wall. I find that a blank backdrop provides a really good canvas to be able to go in and do some edits later if that's something you like to do. And a remote trigger is optional because most cameras and phones have an option where you can set, it's usually like a 3-second or 10-second timer. But I have found the remote trigger is immensely helpful because you can set up your pose and just click and it goes instead of running to your camera and then running back and posing in the amount of time you have, especially if it's 3 seconds. And you can get those for both for your camera and for your smartphone. I have both. I bought one specifically for my camera, but when I bought my ring light off Amazon, which I actually have right here, and it has a little holder for your phone, it came with a Bluetooth remote trigger for your phone. So that's been super helpful. And all of these materials that I've mentioned can be found at places like Amazon for $30 or less each. Obviously, you can find ones that are more expensive, but if you're, on a budget or don't want to spend too much on this, you can absolutely find the options that can fit your budget. Obviously, the phone or the camera is not going to be under $30, but for your ring lights, I think my ring light was like maybe $15. Backdrop was like $15, something like that. And then optional, if you choose to edit your photos, you don't have to. You would use any software or apps to edit your photos. Personally, for photos that I take on my camera, I use Lightroom and Photoshop, but I am going to provide a screenshot at the end of some apps that I take photos on my cell phone. And so just kind of giving you an example of some photos that I took myself in my home. These photos were taken with a tablecloth that I had in storage somewhere. I hung it up in my bedroom and set up my tripod, and throughout some of these photos, you're going to see I put little arrows, and these are arrows indicating where I am holding the remote trigger. So if you're choosing to do something with a remote trigger, you can pose in a way that makes it less conspicuous. You can kind of see it a little bit here, or do poses in which like your hands are cut off or one of your hands are cut off. And so, like I said, one of the things I really love about cosplay photo shoots at home is being able to take just a bland or weird background or something that is totally irrelevant and being able to take it into a really cool cosplay photo. And so you can see I have my before and my after. I cropped it a little bit so you don't see my hallway and my lamp. Obviously did some like editing and overlays and such, did some color changing and made a pretty cool shot, I think. So you would not necessarily know that it was in my bedroom. And then here's another example from the same shoot. This was also in my bedroom, a little bit of a different framing so that you don't see the sides. And kind of same thing, you can still see the background of my tablecloth, but I actually thought it worked pretty well for link. And I specifically did this shot so that you couldn't see that I was holding the remote trigger in my hand. And I'm not doing a before and after for this one because actually the after shot, you could just see the background and it wasn't very informative. But this was in my living room, and this was where after I got my plain white photo backdrop, and you can see I just set it up, taped it to my wall, work smarter, not harder. And then again, did a type of pose where you can't see that I'm holding the remote trigger. And then I haven't edited the first shot yet, but just to give you an idea, you can go in and crop and get some really cool photos. And the second photo actually, it looks like I added an additional light source, but I didn't add an additional light source. It actually was from my light stand that I turned on its side because it has these really cool blue light shades and got a really cool blue tone. So work smarter, not harder. And again, a similar type of thing. This was again taken in my bedroom, hung up my backdrop, did some different poses where you can see I'm holding the remote trigger in my hands in a way that's kind of obscured. And then did some lighting fixes and things like that. And so all of those previous photos were taken on my DSLR camera. You absolutely don't have to go out and buy one of those if you don't want to. These next two photos were just taken on my iPhone, which was on my tripod and attached to this little thing in the middle of my ring light. And taken in my living room just with, I had my ring light and I would just move lamps around to get the type of lighting that I want for the character. And again, holding the remote trigger in a way that you can't tell that I'm holding the remote trigger. It looks like I'm doing a little cutesy sweet pose, but hiding something. And then these are the apps that I use when I take photos on my phone and like to edit them. I usually alternate between Pixlr, I'm gonna call it Camera, and Snow, depending on the type of editing or like the extent of the editing that you wanna do and the type of edits that would work for your character. I use Snow a lot for when I do photos of like Love Live girls or any soft girly type characters because you can do a lot of like cutesy effects and stuff like that, but it also has some really really extensive, and I was actually surprised, overlays that you can do for your photos, so that's really cool. And then Camera and Pixlr, I usually alternate between depending kind of on what the needs of the photo is, and I usually use those for things like brightness changing, color shifts, kind of those technical aspects of editing photos, I guess you could say. And then Flickr and Google Photos is just where I upload things because I've way overstuffed my phone. And then Layout is just when you're organizing collages for Instagram or anything like that. So there are a plethora of other apps that you can find, both for Android and iOS. These are just my personal recommendations that I use pretty frequently. And I think they're pretty user-friendly, and I definitely recommend them, and they are all free. So with that, we have a few minutes left, so I can open it up if anyone has any questions or comments or anything like that. I think I can see the chat. Yeah. No, I can't see the chat. Hang on. I am such a noob with like using Zoom and everything. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know if Brianna,
yeah, no worries. So on the bottom where it says share screen, you can hit the chat.
Yeah, it's not. Oh, maybe I need to stop sharing my screen. Okay, cool. That is. Okay. Now I can see it. Okay, so what are some suggestions for posture as well as knowing whether or not my posture is good? This obviously depends on what your character is and you're going for. Kind of as a general broad overview, I would say, you want to sit up straight, shoulders back, chin up. That general type of thing, because you don't want it to look like you're slouching, you're not actually slouching, especially in photos. Sometimes you can see that. So pretty much the usual thing that will tell you in school where have bad posture, you're sitting at your desk. So like sit up, shoulders back, and obviously depending on what you're doing, that's kind of very broad overview. Comments, questions. Right, and no one else has any other questions. I have one slide that I'm going to switch to, which is just couple housekeeping. And so all of the photographers that I mentioned in this presentation, that photos are mentioned here. And I recommend working with all of them. Most of them I might work with more than once. They're all really great people. Most of them are located in Vincent from New England. And that's where most of my conventions is. Some of them are from New York, Pennsylvania. We go to a lot of cons, so definitely help all of these people on. I think Instagram, a few of them are on Facebook, but I'll find them under these names. And if you have any questions about recommendations for photographers, I can let you know. And then the last bit is where to find me. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all under some variation of the name CiaoBirdie Cosplay. So, and then CiaoBirdie Cosplay on Twitter. So, with that, thank you everyone for coming to my panel and hearing my technical ineptitude here. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some tricks that you can take with you to your photo shoot if you want to be a cosplayer or a photographer. And if you want to chat anymore afterwards, I have my Discord channel around, as well as available on Facebook and Instagram. So thanks for hanging out with me and spending the night with me.
Birdie,
Hey!
can you try to mute and unmute, because we kept hearing echoes, like bad echoes, just to see, and could you repeat your Discord again? Thank you.
All right, how about now?
Yeah, that's way better.
Okay, yeah, I don't know what that was. But you can find me on Discord in my channel in the webcon server, or if you're not on Discord, I am on Facebook and Instagram.
Thank you, Birdie, for that presentation. It was
Thank
awesome.
you for having me.
Oh yeah, no problem. I loved all your photos. And especially like the quarantine photo shoot, like that was super interesting to me. And like how you hide the clicker, because I was also struggling with trying to do photo shoots from home and was doing terrible Zoom backgrounds.
Yeah. And the clickers are usually like, I think mine was $5. You don't need to break the bank on them. They are pretty cheap and definitely a lifesaver.
Well,
Yeah, someone also asked if, is it possible for you to share the links that you showed from one of your slides, from the slides?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I can do that now and send that in the chat so you can have that. So
Well, thank you.
give me 1 second. All right, here is the expressions video. And then here is the posing video. I think that was it. Yeah. All right. Any other last minute questions? Comments? Anything like that?
We'll see. Was it sent through the chat, or maybe am I just not the only? Am I the only one? See, did everybody get to see the links?
Oh, I got it. Yes.
I can resend them. Did that work that time?
Yeah, this one
Cool.
is. There you go.
Cool.
All right, give me a sec, guys. I'm still setting up.
No problem.
All right, so got like 5 minutes until the next panel, so I am gonna tap out. But thank you everyone for coming and hanging out.
Thank you, Birdie.
Thanks, Birdie.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you.
And I also have your panel recorded and the video on the live stream that I can send to you as well.
Oh, sweet, awesome. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you, Birdie.
Yeah, no worries.
So for everyone, we're going to have our next panel that will start in about 4 minutes. So stay put if you're interested in attending that one. And that panel will be Pokemon Throughout the Year by A-Rock. So yeah, so A-Rock will be setting up and then we'll start the next panel shortly.
And it's Pokemon throughout the years.